A gold-bordered recruitment notice hanging on a board reads, "Recruiting for the Royal Guard under the command of Grand Duke Curtis Sandbach." In the hallway, a group of cadets in military uniforms stood before the notice board. A platinum-haired young man asked in surprise, "What is this?" "This isn't a Navy recruitment notice." Another person replied, "Curtis Sandbach, the hero of the kingdom's army." People whispered among themselves, "Ah, that handsome Grand Duke? But it feels a bit strange. Isn't this just being cannon fodder? I heard the Grand Duke has a terrible personality." Suddenly, a gloved hand slapped the recruitment poster, snatching the paper. A girl said calmly, "I'll take it." Her red-haired friend exclaimed in alarm, "What? Chloe, are you serious? Don't go, it's 100% going to be hard. No, 1,000 times harder." "Why do you think the recruitment notice had to be brought all the way here? Isn't it because no one wants the job?" The text on the notice board read, 200% quarterly bonus upon official assignment. Chloe calculated, a 200% quarterly bonus means my family can have enough to eat and survive a season. We wouldn't have to live so miserably for a quarter, the poor and the truly poor. She held the scroll, her expression determined. Whether it's war or hazard pay, I just need to serve for 1 year, right? How harsh can the Duke be? The most important thing is that my family doesn't go hungry. She winked, smiled brightly, and raised her hand with determination. I'll give it a shot, no matter what it is. A panoramic view of a white castle with a blue roof under the sunny sky. Chloe's eyes widened, her face pale with shock. Someone called out loudly, "Second Lieutenant Chloe Ambrose." A blond man in a formal military uniform looked straight ahead and said, "Bow your head." "But I'm the one being." Squeeze dry Curtis Sandbach, the star by of the 200% bonus system, the reason, the cause, the existence. No one lasts more than 2 months under this madman. And now, to explain why. Is there even a need for an explanation? Attitude check, read as punishment, a phrase frequently used by the proud soldier of Avani's, Curtis Sandbach. Curtis, with a stern look, said, "Attitude check." And his command was curt, "Bow your head. No matter how terrible it is, I have to endure it. A crazy superior is making our lives miserable. There's no reason not to be punished, because he's a general who works overtime. Why make his aide work overtime too?" Chloe crumpled the paper in her hand, whispering to herself, "I have to throw this away before I get caught." The hero of the kingdom, Major General Curtis S. H.N.B.E.R.G., my direct superior, the king's younger brother, and the Grand Duke. This madman is obsessed with work and always works overtime, so naturally, his aide has to work overtime too. If you doze off while working, he'll punish you for a lack of discipline. Damn it, I'm done for if I get caught. It's fine, it's just a punishment. At least the money keeps coming in regularly. It's been 3 months since I came here. I've thought about killing the Grand Duke and becoming a criminal or jumping out of the barracks window. But somehow, I've managed to endure. And now, Grand Duke Curtis, with a stern, cold face, said, "Second Lieutenant Ambrose, did you not hear me?" Chloe stood awkwardly still, raising her hand in a salute, sweat flying from the tension. "Reporting, Chloe Ambrose. I heard you clearly, Your Grace." He replied curtly, "Good." Chloe, still holding her salute, blushed. I also heard the second lieutenant's words clearly. She cried silently in her heart. Why did I have to come in at this exact moment? Chloe gritted her teeth, tears rolling down her face as she struggled to hold her salute. Curtis looked on sternly, while Chloe looked up with glistening, tense eyes. Chloe bowed her head forward and said very loudly, "To apologize, I will extend the attitude check by 30 minutes. Curtis raised his hand calmly. There's no need for that. It seems that after 3 months, the second lieutenant has become quite lax. To whip you back into shape." The Grand Duke smiled calmly, touching his chin with his finger as if considering, and said, "A pay cut is best." Chloe was stunned, her mouth agape as she cried out, "What?" Chloe stood dejectedly, facing the Grand Duke. He said, "One more thing." She replied, "Yes, Your Grace. At the diplomatic banquet with the Duke of Glintland today, you will assist me." Chloe was bewildered, breaking into a sweat. Chloe was flustered. "Your Highness, I'm sorry, but I don't have a dress for the banquet." The Grand Duke replied calmly, "What use is a dress to a second lieutenant at a party? You have your Royal Guard uniform." The Grand Duke smiled, turned to leave, and instructed, "Then, at 6 p.m. tonight, at my residence." Chloe forced a smile, while internally she screamed bloody murder. But she said aloud, try to remain calm, loyalty. Chloe, in her Royal Guard uniform, stood neatly before the door, her eyes wide with surprise. Well done. A mustached butler led the way in front. Chloe followed, thinking to herself as she walked, it's huge. How many times bigger than my house is this? As expected from the third-ranked in the nation. The butler said, Miss Ambrose, this way. He smiled and remarked, a female aide appearing at a banquet. Our master is truly determined. Chloe was surprised. Huh? Today's banquet is like a matchmaking session for our master's marriage. Chloe pressed, what? For whom? The Grand Duke is scheduled to meet a duchess from Grandland. A duchess like her must have many other suitable matches. But actually, our master has a few weaknesses due to his lineage. She tilted her head, looking pensive. Weaknesses? Is it because of those weaknesses that he's being forced into a matchmaking session? I want to know his weaknesses too. Both turned toward someone who had just approached, a formal voice calling out. Second Lieutenant Ambrose. You're later than I thought. The Grand Duke was resplendent in a blue and white ceremonial uniform with sparkling accessories. Adjusting a medal on his chest, his aura solemn. Chloe looked at him and thought to herself, we're wearing the same style, but we look completely different. I was even told I look like a palace mouse next to him. The Grand Duke urged curtly, if you're here, then hurry up. What are you standing there for? Chloe raised a fist and hurriedly replied, loudly, loyalty, my apologies. The Grand Duke commented bluntly, your clothes are all wrinkled. Where are your ceremonial ornaments? Chloe blurted out, huh? He moved his hand to his chest and removed an insignia from his uniform. At least wear this. An aide cannot look like that. He stood close, personally pinning the jeweled ornament onto the girl's collar. She widened her eyes, frozen, her hand holding the item, looking down at her chest. She thought in surprise, what is this? Why is he being so kind? The girl gasped and said loudly, sorry. But she wondered to herself, what was that? Dynasty shot? He turned his back and uttered a phrase, pearls before swine. Hearing that, she was certain, so it wasn't that. Let's go. Chloe replied excitedly, yes. Entering the splendid ballroom, Chloe looked up, her eyes wide as she exclaimed, oh. Chloe walked while looking around, thinking, are all those things electric decorations? The Grand Duke, walking ahead, reminded her, Second Lieutenant Ambrose, stop looking around. She bowed, my apologies, I'll correct myself immediately. The king, wearing a red robe, spread his arms in welcome and said, oh, Grand Duke Zanbach, you've arrived. Curtis bowed respectfully. Your Majesty. The king smiled and gestured. I was just about to summon you. Come here and look at this. The king pointed to a large portrait of a red-haired young woman and introduced her. As you know, this is your intended fiancée, Duchess Isabel of Glindland. Curtis and his female aide stood before the painting, listening. Curtis was calm, but confused. Why is she my intended fiancée? I've never heard of this. The exchange between the two unfolded. Royal marriages are often the last to be known by those involved. My surname is not Ivani's. This will not be a royal marriage. No, just marry her. Curtis was resolute. No, she's not my type. No, because you're my brother. You must marry. No, I will do as I please. No, she's arriving today. Just marry her. No, I don't want to. No, I know you don't have a girlfriend. Just marry her. Chloe stood frozen and confused. She wondered, is this for real? Arguing to this extent. Then she realized, oh, the top figures of Ivani's are really arguing. How disheartening. I apologize, Your Majesty, but I have something to say to my foolish older brother. I have a woman I've already promised to marry. The Crown King chuckled, then asked half-believingly, you expect me to believe that? The corner of Curtis's mouth twitched slightly. Curtis suddenly wrapped his arm around Chloe's shoulder, pulling her close. Chloe was stunned. Curtis said curtly, right here. Curtis declared clearly, Chloe Ambrose, the love of my life, who just entered my life. Chloe's eyes widened, sweating from shock. Me? Life never goes the way you think. A thought I always carry with me. I just want to punch him once. No, I want to make him bow his head once. Because of what happened that day. Chloe smiled calmly and bowed her head. Curtis's eyes widened, staring straight ahead, stunned. Curtis bowed deeply, while Chloe stood with her arms crossed. And just like that, my life has changed. Are you thinking of cutting your hair? Huh? I didn't hear you clearly. Never mind. Chloe and a brown-haired young man sat leaning against a wooden railing by the water. The young man said that if she didn't tie her hair up, it would have been cut right off if she left it down. Chloe turned and asked, "My hair?" The brown-haired young man looked worried and explained, "He's extremely obsessed with cleanliness." Behind him, Chloe's eyes widened in amazement, still holding an apple. "You said you were going home, but you're not actually going?" "Yeah, overtime. Second lieutenant." "Why aren't you going home?" He said, his voice casual. "I've read the report you wrote. It's terrible. Rewrite it." And now, Chloe stood with her arms crossed, looking down. She narrowed her eyes, gave a faint smile, and uttered a sarcastic remark. "Try cooking it and see how it turns out, Your Highness." He was sweating lightly. His gaze darkened, his expression momentarily flustered. She was silent, just staring. Back to when they announced this romantic relationship. "Chloe Ambrose, my love, who visited not long ago." Chloe gasped, her mouth agape. The man smiled calmly and said, "A little foolish, but that's also part of her charm." Standing behind him, Chloe screamed internally, "What the hell? No, it was strange from the moment you suddenly invited me to the party. What are you talking about? If you don't fix this right now, there will be big trouble." Chloe turned towards the king, forcing a smile, and said politely, "Your Majesty, this is—" The Duke signaled to her. Chloe's eyes widened in surprise. Curtis tilted his head calmly, a shadow behind him seeming to say, "I'll explain everything later." "So you're using your special ability." Chloe was dazed, sweating lightly, but the drawback of this ability was that it was incomprehensible. Chloe turned, frowning and muttering, "No, I mean, what the hell?" His hand quickly grasped hers. Curtis wrote a long string of words while holding her hand. Special promotion, bonus, special benefits, paid leave, advantageous salary. In front of the king, Curtis still held Chloe's hand. The king asked in surprise, "What are you two doing?" Suddenly holding hands so tightly. Curtis smiled slightly and said, "Also, everything you want." At this point, someone might think, "Why do you want to marry me? Could it be that it's not true love?" No, that can't be it. In the kingdom of Ivanis, there is a system called upper-class marriage. Simply put, if he marries a commoner, the Grand Duke will also become a commoner and lose his right to the throne. To avoid that, he must marry someone of the same noble class. But currently, the Grand Duke has no one in his heart. If the Grand Duke marries the Duchess of Glucha, the relationship between the two nations will be strengthened, and the king would be delighted to welcome it. Furthermore, even if the Grand Duke tried to find someone to marry to avoid the situation, the people around him willing to help are all commoners. The Grand Duke has two choices: either be sold off to a foreign country or marry a commoner and lose his inheritance rights. It's truly a difficult situation with no good options. And here, I appear as a variable. My family is very poor, but surprisingly, we belong to the minor nobility. If you marry me, you'll keep your status and won't have to marry the Duchess. The Grand Duke cannot easily refuse my offer, and even if we marry, it's easy to divorce. A person the Duke will never love. That would be Chloe Ambrose. Isn't this condition too advantageous for him? Curtis calmly muttered, "Bonus, promotion, special treatment. You always look like you're thirsty for money. Am I wrong?" Chloe froze. Her lips parted in surprise at his words. That. She remembered her family. "Sister, did you know? If you add water to the bread, you can eat more. If it weren't for you, I'd probably be malnourished by now." She clenched her fist, thinking, "Damn it, that's exactly right." Chloe said clearly, "I have received a marriage proposal from the Grand Duke. Koku too. But what are you doing in front of His Majesty, my love?" Curtis tilted his head to look back and replied, "Lowly what?" Chloe's cheeks flushed, her hand clutching the metal on her chest. She shouted, "Chloe is moved. Yes, let's get married." The crowned king's eyes widened in astonishment, his face filled with surprise. Everyone in the room was applauding. The two stood close together, Chloe wide-eyed, while Curtis maintained a calm but stunned posture. Curtis leaned in and said softly, "We'll talk privately later." She agreed. "Yes, that's exactly what I was hoping for." 30 minutes before the Grand Duke rapped his subordinate on the head. A person for whom 15 days is not enough. Curtis looked up, his gaze stern, but his voice soft. "Isn't that right?" Curtis was born to the king of Ivanis and the princess of Glintland. Curtis's mother was an incredibly intelligent woman, to the point that, "I don't want my son to die by being drawn into political conflict. Please let this child hold titles in both nations." Thanks to his mother's sincere plea, Curtis was granted dual noble titles. The problem was, not only was he extremely handsome, but he was also an overly intelligent and talented prince. He joined the army to fulfill his duty as the second son. But as long as he remained the Grand Duke of Bach, his right to the throne was still valid. This made the king deeply uneasy. Even so, I didn't expect him to plan on sending you to Glintland before you could claim the right of succession. Or look among the ladies who were once infatuated with you. The young lady from the Navy, Lady Arya, for example. Curtis frowned and replied curtly, "Say something that makes sense. It's obvious the outcome would be bad." Curtis sat leisurely holding a teacup, saying calmly, "I already have someone in mind. I'm not sure how well she fits my requirements, but that poor girl, how pitiful." Cut to Chloe, sitting slumped on the sofa, utterly exhausted. That poor girl is her. In front, the Grand Duke stood with his back to her. A short compliment was heard. "Well written. I'm glad to know that version was written well. I didn't expect you to handle that situation so well." Chloe smiled wryly. "Yeah, I just discovered I have that talent too." A short flashback. In the Grand Hall, the king looked at them and asked, "You mean you're engaged?" Lying before the king is equivalent to treason. You know that, right? Why hide it until now? Chloe blurted out, her expression panicked. "Well, because until now I was planning to refuse. I thought the Grand Duke was just joking when he proposed to me. I believed our love was just a fleeting joke. That's what I used to think." The female lead threw herself onto the Grand Duke's arm, her eyes welling with feigned anger. "But if I had known you were serious, so serious as to mention it in front of His Majesty." The two were silent for a moment, their expressions strained. The female lead gritted her teeth, her face contorted from the effort, and whispered, "Can you control your expression?" The Grand Duke glanced over. "I'm about at my limit too." The king said coldly, "You have a very good actress for a subordinate, Grand Duke. She must be trustworthy. You expect me to believe this?" Chloe wondered. Even after all that, he's still not convinced? Suddenly, she remembered something. This is it, a card that will make the king believe immediately. Chloe turned forward, her gaze determined. "If your majesty does not believe me, then I have no choice but to present proof." The king looked down doubtfully. "Proof?" Chloe pointed to the brooch on her chest. "The brooch on my chest is a token of love from my beloved as a proposal gift. The back is engraved with the crest of the House of Bach. Would you like to verify it yourself? Of course, if your majesty says this is also staged, we will have no way to refute it. But I believe that if you insist on demanding proof like this, I'm afraid the other nobles here will also find it difficult to be at ease." The atmosphere in the hall became noticeably awkward. The corner of her mouth lifted in a slight, smug smile. She thought to herself, "Is there any other way? Don't ruin the mood. Just end it." "Ha ha." The king gritted his teeth, his anger flaring. End of situation. His Majesty's face at that moment. "It's a pity only I got to see it. Damn it, this thing is 100% fake, but damn them." Chloe covered her mouth, laughing happily, while the Grand Duke stood beside her with a calm expression. "If I were alone, I would never have seen that expression." Chloe stood opposite him, her expression calm as she said, "Initially, I was going to ask for your cooperation in a very subtle way. So, what do you plan to do about the marriage now?" The Grand Duke stood thoughtfully, one hand on his chin, and said, "There will be no wedding. I was planning to ask you to pretend to be my partner, but with how things have escalated, there's no other choice." The girl sat on the sofa, looking at him with a half-stunned, half-reproachful expression. "Do you understand what you just said? You're telling me to play the role of the Grand Duchess you're madly in love with, right?" She bowed her head gloomily and muttered, "So this is how I'm getting married? I've never had a proper romance in my entire life." He turned back, sincere, "Thank you." She genuinely turned and replied softly, "Thank you for what? It's no big deal." She closed her eyes and smiled. "But since it's come to this, I won't be the only one at a disadvantage." She shot up, refreshed. "I have my own demands, you know." Her hand clenched into a fist. In the distance, he stood with his arms crossed. She thought, "With everything I've endured until now, this is the least I can ask for. Right now, I'm indispensable to you, right? Someone you absolutely have to keep, right?" He stammered in reply. "Why, yes, that's right." "Then now kneel, Grand Duke." The male lead's eyes widened, and he repeated her words in astonishment. "Kneel before you?" She replied curtly, "Yes." She urged internally, "Hurry up, Grand Duke. The overtime, the punishments, I'll make you pay for it all." The male lead glanced aside with an uneasy look, sweating, while the girl stood before him with a mischievous smile. Do it now, a sincere act to prove that I can trust you. He asked, is that really what you want? Chloe replied immediately, yes, please kneel quickly. He was silent, sweating lightly. His eyes flashed as if he suddenly remembered something. The Duke said calmly, you're right, now I understand what you want. I forgot something important. Chloe stood opposite him, surprised. Huh? It seems we've skipped an important step that cannot be overlooked. The Duke picked up a small, dark-colored box. He turned to look at her sternly and called out, Lieutenant Ambrose. Chloe answered immediately, yes. A gloved hand opened a dark blue ring box. Inside was a ring with a purple stone. The man's words, this is the ring my mother received when the late king proposed to her. He knelt before her, holding up the ring box. Chloe stood straight, her eyes wide with surprise. Looking up, he asked decisively, will you marry me? Chloe was stunned, her thoughts racing. Is this really happening? Is this for real? The Duke will never love. That Grand Duke Bach already has a fiancée, and this person is the Duchess of Glintland. Over here, Chloe spoke up. Excuse me. The Grand Duke said, I assume the lieutenant recognizes this gem. Is the divine flame. A proposal without proper ceremony would feel lacking, wouldn't it? I didn't expect you to be so romantic. I'm truly surprised. He smiled confidently. So, does this meet your expectations? The girl recoiled, trembling, and shouted in anger. Disgusting. Using a family heirloom to propose? It's too much pressure. He was startled. Huh? Isn't this what you wanted? Then what did you mean by Neil? She put her hands on her hips and replied calmly. I meant it literally. Bow your head. The Grand Duke narrowed his eyes, a half-smile on his lips, and asked in disbelief, you're kidding, right? The girl looked away, her eyes half closed, her expression nonchalant. Then his pupils widened, and he broke into a sweat. What's the reason? What do you gain from this? She replied, you can find the answer if you look back at the past. You blocked my path to marriage first. Then you belatedly asked for my help, and I helped. Now, no matter what happens, you need my permission, your grace. I will repay you. Yes, I'm sure you will. But what about my family? Now, did they have to endure the scrutiny of other nobles just because of this sudden engagement to you? Your grace. Marrying you is not only a burden for me. My family will also have to bear it, always being looked down upon, seen as unworthy of their station. For your information, I have 3 younger siblings, and they haven't even finished their education. Thanks to your actions today, those children are now in an unimaginable situation, just like me. Honestly, even with wealth, this is not something I would voluntarily choose. But what's done is done. Avoiding marriage with you is no longer an option. He said in a serious tone, I will do everything I can to protect your family and resolve any other issues. She said, thank you, but regardless of that, let me make one thing clear. I want to be the one in power in this contract. A smile played on her lips. So bow your head. So, you mean you want me to prove with my actions that you have the upper hand? The young woman nodded immediately. If that bothers you, you can always start a new life on the shores of Glintland. She crossed her arms, smiling with amusement. She told herself that perhaps she had gone too far. Should I hold back a little? No, I need to be firm, no, but still. He said clearly, I completely understand your point of view, Lieutenant. The girl fell back, her eyes wide with surprise as she exclaimed, huh? From now on, Lieutenant. He leaned in close, calm, and said, you will have to bear the full price of making me kneel. Then he prostrated himself on the ground, his hands clasped behind his back. The girl standing opposite looked down in astonishment. He asked, by the way, Lieutenant, how much longer do we have to do this? She asked back, are you really doing it? He replied, you are the one who told me to do it. Chloe raised both hands as if signaling to stop. She said, you can get up now. I have seen enough of your determination. I'm also a little afraid of retaliation. Retaliation? Do I look like the petty type to do that? Chloe answered meekly, a little. He swept his hair to the side, his expression serious yet calm. There will be no retaliation. Anyway, this makes one thing clear. You are exactly the bride I have been searching for all this time. Chloe smiled with her eyes narrowed, sweating slightly from embarrassment. You mean someone who can handle business well, right? That's right, and especially someone with the sharpness to see through my intentions. I don't want you to be the only one making sacrifices in this arrangement. I'd rather avoid lingering resentment or a higher price later on. He called her name, Chloe Ambrose, then said formally, I am proposing to you once again. While we are married, use me as you please. After all, I am of royal blood. You may not own my soul, but I will let you treat me as your temporary master. The girl broke out in a cold sweat, her eyes wide and blank. blank as she wondered. Not a stray dog, but a temporary master? He asked, "You don't like it?" She replied, her face flat. "It's not like I have any choice." "Very well, I will become the temporary master of you." The corners of his lips curved slightly, his gaze softening. "My mother's entire life changed when she wore this ring. I swear, it will not bring you misfortune either." The girl looked up at her hand, at the gold ring on her finger. She told herself inwardly, we are really engaged now. "Well then, we have work to do." She asked back, "What? What work?" The girl's face went blank. A thought appeared in the middle of the night, just the two of them. As an engaged couple, "Don't tell me this perverted man." She screamed, "No, even as a couple, this is too much. We are just business partners." The Duke wondered, "What are you talking about?" "Now that we are engaged, I will cut your overtime pay. Sit down and take a pen. We have a whole year's training schedule to arrange." Chloe's face flushed red. She clutched her chest and thought to herself, "Unbelievable. His pettiness is truly boundless. Lieutenant Chloe is marrying him?" Thinking back, there was something suspicious when working late, Chloe secretly drew his portrait. Wasn't it just a sketch with holes for the eyes, nose, and mouth? "He doesn't understand my feelings at all." Her comrades guessed it might be true. In a wooden-roofed house, a shout was heard, "Sister, what the hell have you done?" Chloe said, "It just turned out this way." Leah yelled, "Didn't you call him a bastard just a few days ago?" Chloe raised her hand slightly, her stunned face turning away. "Yeah, because he's an idiot who doesn't understand my feelings at all." Leah lunged forward and said loudly, "Tell me the truth. You're being sold for money, aren't you?" Chloe sighed and admitted, "Yeah, that's right." Leah's face broke out in sweat. "My God." The little girl's eyes widened as she asked, "Sister, do you think I'm an idiot? Who in their right mind would pay to buy you and then marry you?" Chloe was stunned. She put her sister in a headlock and pulled her close, yelling irritably, "Are you my sister or my enemy?" "My God." Leah frowned, one hand on her forehead as she asked sharply, "So when's the wedding?" She held up her hands to count, a total of 7 fingers. Leah turned her face to the side, speaking more calmly. "Oh, 7 months? That's faster than I thought." Chloe smiled through her streaming tears. "No, 7 days." Leah was stunned, her eyes wide. "You've really lost your mind, you old hag. Elsewhere, is this it?" A girl asked, "Is this all the information on Chloe?" Amboise? A hand offered a teacup to the man in a vest sitting opposite. His eyes widened in surprise. "Please have a warm cup of tea." "Well then, now, can you tell me what you saw that day?" His hand trembled as he took it, his words broken. I can't forget that day. It felt like I'd just seen a ghost, and how that woman, with such a scary face right in front of me." The image of Chloe tilting her head, blushing, pressing close to Curtis's arm and calling, "My love," while the Duke stood stiffly, his face impassive. The blue-haired man clutched his head, his face pale and horrified. "And you call that?" Elsewhere was a shout, "You insolent bastard." Even Grand Duke Bach wasn't enough, now his son too. Does the royal family think they can do whatever they want? The lady sipped her tea and said, "It seems I have unintentionally caused a stir for the royal family. I sincerely apologize." "No, I should be the one to apologize." A member of the royal family daring to publicly say he doesn't care about the national interest. The pink-haired lady calmly held a spoon over a plate of cake and said, "But from the royal family's perspective, this might be a good thing. After all, the people will rely more on the king instead of someone who disregards the national interest and only seeks personal gain, right?" You have a point. The Duchess is indeed farsighted. Anyway, since their marriage announcement is official, we can no longer interfere. But love is fragile. Why don't you stay a little longer? She replied, "Ho ho, it would be my honor." "Then I shall take my leave. Please rest well." "Yes, your majesty." In the room, the pink-haired girl swept her hand forcefully, knocking things off the table. She screamed, "Damn it, I've finally set foot in Iverness. If only I had a chance to meet before the wedding, just once." "No, it's not over until it's really over." A slender hand, holding a silver bell, rang softly in the splendid room. She called, "Have I arrived? Where's the dowry I brought?" "It has been stored in the next room. Let's go take a look." She said, "This is beautiful. Send this vase as a wedding gift to the Grand Duke." Night fell over the palace dome. A voice rang out, "Allegiance, I am Warrant Officer Chloe Ambrose. Come in." In a brightly lit office, Chloe stood before the desk. Curtis sat behind it holding a file. Another officer stood beside him. Curtis asked, "Have you finished moving your things? Is your family adapting well?" Chloe replied awkwardly, They seem to love it." She recalled, "Is this heaven? Am I dead? I'm still full of life. This is our new home. The Grand Duke's estate, the villa wing. Hey sister, this playground is so soft. Chloe corrected, that's the bed. The brown-haired officer raised a finger to remind them, good. Now that your family is safe until the wedding, you two also need to do what must be done. The first step to becoming a married couple, drafting the prenuptial agreement. The coordinator said, let's check the clauses you both submitted, starting with the warrant officer first. Chloe held the paper, cleared her throat. Ahem, all right. First condition. The clause title appears above. Clause 1. No overtime work during the contract period. The Duke immediately said, not accepted. Chloe jumped up, holding out a hand. Wait, at least hear my explanation. Do you want to be remembered as a heartless husband who makes his wife work overtime? Curtis replied nonchalantly, I think I'm already remembered as a heartless boss. She muttered, a husband and a boss are completely different. Curtis sighed seriously, regardless, overtime is unavoidable. You will have to play the role of the Duchess 24/7. There will definitely be situations where you have to handle main duties like attending banquets. Chloe froze, sweating, her expression bewildered. Chloe asked cautiously, does that count as overtime too? Curtis replied, I don't think so. She replied, no. Curtis tilted his head to read the paper. All right. As long as it's limited to your duties as a warrant officer of the Royal Guard, there will be no overtime. Below is a banner stating Clause 1. No overtime work during the contract period with an accepted stamp. First, we need to consult the Military Law Committee to see if he can still be my aide after the wedding. She replied, that should be fine. He asked, how can a warrant officer be so sure? The brown-haired man holding the paper said, who else could be your aide? Curtis looked at the board, sweating slightly. He lowered his voice. Next, a golden title at the top stated the clause. Clause 2, a separate contract fee of 1 million sin and a 400% salary increase. Curtis was calm. The contract fee is fine, but the salary increase is not. Chloe jumped up. Why? Are you really that stingy? Your salary doesn't come from my pocket, but from the National Treasury. If I increase your salary at this time, it's like giving the king an excuse to make things difficult for us. Curtis made a concession. Instead, I will personally pay your allowance. 10 million sin per year. Chloe was stunned with happiness, raising her hand in a salute, allegiance. I will do my best in this marriage. Below is a banner stating Clause 2, a separate contract fee of 1 million sin and a 400% salary increase with an accepted stamp. Then this is the final clause. Let's see. Clause 3, Curtis Bach must always obey Chloe Ambrose. The Duke's expression darkened. Curtis crossed his arms, his mood sour. Another service check. I'm starting to get a little annoyed. Chloe, sitting opposite, waved her hands dismissively. No, it's not like that. I just wanted to get everything in writing while we're at it. There are detailed subclauses. Please write them down. Curtis replied curtly, just start. Clause 3.1 Curtis Bach must regard Chloe Ambrose as a superior and show utmost respect. Clause 3.2 if Chloe Ambrose invokes this contract, Curtis Bach is obligated to grant any request 3 times during the contract term. Curtis frowned and asked, what does that mean? Curtis raised an eyebrow. Do you think I'm a wish-granting genie? Chloe pointed and explained, no, I've thought this through carefully. After all, what I'm doing is openly defying His Majesty the King. Curtis admitted that's right, and if the king gets angry, he will target me more easily than you. Curtis looked straight ahead, calmly replying, that is also true. So my life and my family's lives will be in more danger than yours, right? Curtis nodded in agreement. That makes sense. He concluded, so you mean to say that 3 times during the contract term, I must prioritize your interests over mine, I understand. Clause 3, Curtis Bach must always obey Chloe Ambrose. With an accepted stamp, frame 3. Now, then, let's look at your conditions. Clause 1. From the moment Chloe Ambrose takes the Bach surname, she must diligently fulfill the accompanying duties. Chloe looked down at the document and said, that's what we discussed before, I understand. Chloe's face froze as she read the title. Clause 2. Chloe Ambrose acknowledges that she is in a contractual relationship with Curtis Bach and will not interfere with Curtis Bach's romantic relationships during the contract term. She asked, are you planning to date? Curtis replied casually, this won't last forever anyway. Why are you so surprised? Are you in love with me? She denied it, a little flustered. No, it's not that. It just feels strange. You're planning to date. Of all people, you. Dating? Curtis sighed. What do you think I am? Chloe pointed, replying nonchalantly, a robot? A robot vacuum cleaner. Curtis's voice was stern. You're not obeying Clause 3, so it's straight to the dungeon for you. Just endure it a little longer, then I will find another woman, date her, and divorce you, so don't worry. Chloe replied concisely, "Ah, so that will be your reason for divorce, I understand." She thought to herself, that sounds like a good deal. If we agree, let's move on to the next clause. Clause 3. Chloe Ambrose will not invade Curtis Bach's personal space, nor will she nurture or express personal feelings during the contract term. The girl looked straight at him and asked, "What counts as personal space?" The blonde man replied nonchalantly, "The bed." She reminded him, "You do know we're married, right? Even if it's just an act for the servants, it would be very awkward if we can't even use the bed, right?" He frowned and replied, "Just because I don't want to sleep together, why are you making such a big deal? Do you have feelings for me? Why don't you just give up?" She said angrily, "Do you think feelings that don't exist will just magically appear? Right now, all I feel is anger." A few words are crossed out in the clause. The clause states, Clause 3, Chloe Ambrose must not invade Curtis Bach's private space, nor nurture or express romantic feelings during the contract term. Close up on the contract paper with an approved stamp, she said, "That's fine. But when you get into bed, tie up your hair and wear long clothes." She replied briefly, "Agreed." The mediating officer held the contract and announced, "All right, the official contract is now complete. I trust you, but you know this must be kept secret, especially from Agatha, right?" The young man replied, "Of course." Chloe turned to ask with a surprised look, "Agatha?" Noel smiled, leaning in to answer, "Ah, she's my sister." Chloe covered her mouth, her eyes sparkling with shock. She exclaimed, "Unbelievable. How did it come to this?" "My condolences." Noel replied, "Indeed. Agatha didn't even get a contract fee like Warrant Officer Ambrose." Curtis interjected, leaning in to remind him, "Noel, stop joking and prepare the fake contract for the official presentation." Noel picked up the quill decisively. "This is easy." Then he added, "The title will be inherited by their son." Noel asked directly, "And the dowry?" The Grand Duke shrugged. "What dowry? She's just a salaried soldier. I'll pay for everything." "Right, 80 million. Chloe's face went blank, her eyes wide as she cried out, "What?" Noel held out the document and explained Greenland offered a dowry of 80 million. It's basically an open act of defiance. Moreover, with this number, Curtis held the stack of papers, his expression calm. "It will make people think I'm deeply in love with you. An 80 million dowry. I can't believe I ended up with an 80 million price tag. Will I be able to do my part?" "All right, now that the contract is complete." Curtis smiled at Chloe. "Shall we move on to the main event of the wedding?" She wondered, the main event of the wedding? Someone pinched lightly, trembling with short gasps, "Ha," and a moan. "Ah, it hurts," the male lead said in a calm voice. "Suffering over just this much? It's not your first time." The female lead, in a tight-fitting wedding dress, her face flushed, struggled against her restraints. Behind her, a seamstress was trying to hold the dress. The male lead stood at a distance with his arms crossed. She yelled, "No, it is the first time. This dress is so uncomfortable." The seamstress pulled the dress laces. The female lead wailed, "Does everyone really wear this to get married? Don't people have bones?" The seamstress said, "The wedding dress is the highlight of the wedding." The female lead lamented, "Can't I wear something else? The dress is too small." The seamstress explained further, "You must wear it. This is the dress his mother wore." The Grand Duke reassured, "Yes, be patient. It is a dress filled with my love for you." The female lead's face darkened, fuming internally. "Should I kill him?" The seamstress quickly soothed her. "Please bear with it a little longer, Ms. Ambrose. After the wedding, I will make you 100 perfectly fitting outfits." Two hands were pulling the corset strings with all their might. "Just one more try." A loud scream echoed from within the mansion, covering the screen. Chloe, in her wedding dress, collapsed onto the floor, her face contorted and trembling. Behind her, Curtis stood with his arms crossed, watching. She muttered, "Oh no, I said no, I said no." Curtis stepped forward. He said, "It seems the problem is your strength. Give me the ribbon." Curtis stood close behind her, leaning down to help tighten the laces of Chloe's dress. They were very close. Chloe froze for a moment. The female seamstress covered her mouth in embarrassment, then closed the door and stepped out, leaving the two of them alone. The girl wondered, "Isn't this a little too close? I can feel his breath. This feeling is a little strange." Curtis, standing behind, pulled the dress laces hard, and Chloe's body was yanked into an arch, her mouth open in a cry of pain. Curtis looked down at the string in his hand, his expression impassive, then said, "Oh, it's no good." Chloe lay exhausted on the bed. She muttered, "I've definitely broken a bone." Curtis stood beside her and reminded, "Don't exaggerate." Chloe's thought at that moment was, no wonder it felt strange, because this is the posture of being restrained. Curtis's voice called, "Julia, come in." And a reply, yes, it's done. He said, it's only 3 days until the wedding. It will be difficult to make a new dress, right? Julia bowed her head apologetically. I apologize, Your Grace, a custom-made dress is impossible. His expression was pensive. He said, how did it come to this? Should we at least add decorations to a ready-made dress? Time is tight, but it will be faster than making one from scratch. Perhaps we have no other choice. How long would it take to alter a ready-made dress? First, we need to find a dress in the right size. Then, you'll have to try them all on and choose suitable decorations. Even so, the schedule is very tight. Shall we go right now? The two of them, wait a moment. I have an idea. The long-awaited wedding day finally arrived. The weather was clear. Birds chirped tweet tweet. The sun said, I'm all fired up. The gentle song of the birds. And a handsome groom. And the star of the ceremony, the beautiful bride. The groom stood beside her and said, you look tired. The bride, slumped in a chair and wearing a robe, replied wearily, yeah, thanks to someone. The sacred ceremony, the blood pact, memorizing the names of nobles, and the declaration, it was all too much. He asked, you think becoming royalty is easy? She replied, it's easy for you. He continued, if you're jealous, you should have been born into royalty. The bride looked over, muttering helplessly, I can't even hit him. A silver-haired man approached, turned to the groom, and reminded him, you're teasing your fiancé too much, uncle. The silver-haired young man raised his hand in a polite greeting. She recognized this person as Prince Frederick. Chloe introduced herself. I am Lieutenant Chloe Ambrose. The prince said calmly, be at ease. By the end of today, you will be my superior. Chloe stood at attention, saluting by the book, her expression serious. I cannot, Your Highness. Since we are not yet officially married, I am just a soldier. Frederick was surprised. Wow, such a diligent and serious person. Frederick leaned in and asked with a curious expression, why are you marrying my uncle? If you're being threatened, shake a carrot. Curtis cut in, is that enough? Frederick said, actually, uncle, I came to tell you it's your turn. Curtis replied, I would have appreciated it if you had said so from the start. Then came the farewell. I'm off. See you later. Curtis turned and walked away, while the two stood and watched him go. Chloe was a bit awkward. She thought to herself, this situation is so awkward, being alone with another superior. The prince stood slightly turned from Chloe. He said, now that my uncle has left, may I ask you something, Lady Ambrose? Chloe replied, yes. The prince asked directly, why are you marrying the Grand Duke? A wary look appeared in Chloe's eyes. Is he testing me? She said, because we love each other with an unwavering love. The prince smiled, replying, love? My crazy uncle caused a scene in the hall. He came to see me right after. In a flashback, in the office, Curtis stood before the desk, handing papers to the seated prince. Curtis said, will you permit me to use the holy sanctuary? The prince looked at the paper with surprise. He asked, the sanctuary? Curtis, standing opposite, answered, for the wedding, His Majesty will never allow it to be opened. Just this once, there won't be a second time. The prince considered, again, for someone who lost control over love in front of the public, that statement is awkward. To be honest, I can understand my uncle's position. He has no interest in the throne, but my father is always needlessly insecure and restrains him. Now he's even using marriage as an excuse to exile him to Greenland. Chloe thought to herself, is it really okay to speak ill of the king like this? The prince continued, once there, they'll probably give him a remote region and turn him into a shield against pirates. Naturally, he wouldn't want that. I understand that completely. However, I don't understand you, Lady Ambrose. You gain nothing from this. If it were to raise your social status, you wouldn't have buried yourself in the military for so many years. If it's a financial deal, there's always the risk that His Majesty will retaliate after the divorce. At that point, all the wealth you receive could turn into worthless paper. And what about your military career? You can't continue once you've lost His Majesty's trust. No matter how you look at it, you only stand to lose. So tell me the truth. Why are you really marrying my uncle? She swallowed, hesitating, muttering to herself, well, because I really want to see your uncle's head buried in the ground. The prince is a man who lives by reason. I must have really confused someone like him. Then Chloe blurted out, actually, I have admired His Highness, the Grand Duke, for a very long time. All right, I'll explain. His exploits on the battlefield were all over the papers, right? So I applied to be his aide, and luckily, I was accepted. Chloe is such a lucky girl. The two stood opposite each other, the air frozen. Chloe maintained her V pose, but was sweating, thinking to herself, did I overdo it? The prince's lips curved slightly into a smile. Haha, I see. As expected, you are well suited for the position of Grand Duchess. Chloe was flustered. Thank you. Chloe turned her head in surprise. Curtis raised a hand to scratch his head, half helpless, half teasing. No need to thank him. He means you know when to lie. Oh my, uncle, you're back. He stood with his arms crossed. Be a good nephew and stop bothering your aunt. I heard everything from downstairs. The prince asked curtly, bothering her? I was just checking if my aunt was extorting the people like those rotten nobles. I was worried, that's all. Are you really that romantic? Curtis's lips curled into a sneer. Humph. Suddenly I feel more like disciplining you than the people that go on. Prince Frederick, the priest is looking for you. Frederick replied quickly. Perfect timing. I'd better go before you tease me more. I'll be right back. Before leaving, Frederick turned back and smiled warmly at Chloe. Anyway, Lady Ambrose, I sincerely hope that everything you said is true. Inside the temple on the wedding day, whispers arose. Excited for today? Even Grand Duke Bach is rushing to get married. 3 lavishly dressed ladies gathered, covering their mouths to laugh. I know, right? Did they get into some kind of trouble? Oh my, how vulgar. At least they're doing it properly. The ceremony at the temple, a full honor guard. They have to try. The bride has no status. The red-haired woman pointed to the bride's side of the seating. Look over there. The bride's side is full of kids. Even her parents didn't show up. Losing your temper will only embarrass our sister. He replied, you think a few words from me are enough to ruin her image? If anyone's going to ruin things, it's that shameful person over there. The pink-haired lady strode through the pews. Behind her, a few ladies whispered. The king of Greenland hastily granted her a title and sent her over to seduce him. Now I get it. She's going to completely overshadow the bride to compete with her beauty. Ladies, one with blue hair and one with purple, whispered, dresses and makeup usually aren't enough. I heard Empress Mildred's cosmetics room was open for her too. Oh, at least that makes the competition a little fairer. So she's trying that hard just to win by a narrow margin. An announcement rang out. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Oh, it's starting. Well then, let's see. Now begins the ceremony of Grand Duke Curtis Annex Ivani's Bach. Let's see how well the bride is prepared. Next rang out, and Lieutenant Chloe Ambrose. The large doors opened, and 2 figures walked in side by side on the blue carpet. A panicked, brown-haired young man pointed at the entrance, sweating. What is that? At a wedding. She's wearing a military uniform. Both were wearing white ceremonial military uniforms with elaborate capes and medals, and she wore a small tiara. Rewinding a bit, 3 days ago, a scream was heard outside the mansion. She said, all right, instead of those inhumane methods, I have a better idea. The Grand Duke replied, tell me. The mandatory accessories for a royal wedding are a tiara and a ceremonial sash, right? The tailor answered firmly, yes. Without them, the marriage won't be recognized. Since I already have the tiara sent by His Highness Species, you don't have to worry about that part. Curtis tilted his head in confusion. But surely you're not planning to just wear a tiara in your underwear? She replied, oh, of course not. After all, we are royal guards. Did you know the guard has its own ceremonial uniform? Of its own. The tailor's eyes widened. What? You're planning to wear a military uniform? The Grand Duke understood. You mean the white ceremonial uniform, right? Chloe raised an index finger. Of course, he loves me so much that I was a little against it at first. But as a member of the guard, my loyalty remains steadfast. In other words, by wearing a military uniform to the wedding, I'm proving that I have absolutely no interest in the throne. Leave me alone. I'm completely indifferent to the throne. See? Isn't this the best way to make my position clear? The tailor said worriedly, no, this is still a wedding. After all, are you really going to wear that? The Duke began to think. That's a good idea, Ambrose. Well then, shall we proceed with an unprecedented wedding in ceremonial uniforms? 2 guests looked at each other in confusion. The woman asked, what kind of political move is this? The man chimed in, that's right. Who would think of wearing a military uniform to a wedding? But it looks quite impressive, doesn't it? I never expected Queen Mildred's tiara to go so well with the uniform. Someone said, I thought the bride would never compare to Duchess Glintland, but that's not the case at all. They actually exude completely different auras. A man turned towards the couple and announced, excuse me, Pastor James Loser is in position to witness this sacred union. Before the guardian dragons of Ivani's Ibanes and Grandisad, do you both swear that your love will last forever? The groom thought, forever? Well, we're going our separate ways soon anyway. But seeing how everything is prepared like this, my second wedding won't be difficult at all. Next time, I'll wear a proper wedding dress instead of a military uniform. And I'll stand there with a relaxed smile. Relaxed, but not with her but with the one I love. But with my true love, for some reason, this makes me uncomfortable. Until that day, I'll have a mountain of work to do. He answered, yes, I swear. The man asked, bride, do you also swear? The bride answered concisely, yes. The wedding guests whispered. Many women were astonished, blushing as they discussed, what? Did he just smile? Goodness, he's really handsome. To be honest, I only came here to see the Grand Duke. Only. The officiant turned to the groom and asked, groom, do you have anything to offer as a vow before God? The groom replied, yes. He lifted a necklace with a pink stone from a red velvet pillow. The Grand Duke leaned close to the girl, one hand behind her head, and put on the jewelry. Their faces almost touched. She blushed and thought, we're not this close, are we? We? The man looked up at her and said calmly, that's enough. The military uniform suits you well. The clergyman standing by the altar said, all right, let's continue with the vows. The groom interjected, oh, and one more thing. He opened the ring box. That's the sacred flame, isn't it? Queen Mildred's ring. The groom's voice rang out as a token of my love and fidelity. Of mine, I give this ring to Chloe Ambrose. The guests gasped and whispered, their faces full of astonishment. He's really giving it to her. Goodness, the Grand Duke is serious. It can't be. The young man asked, why is everyone reacting like that? Isn't it normal to give that? The girl replied, well, normally it would be for Chloe Bach. But this isn't Chloe Bach, it's Chloe Ambrose. That ring, regardless of the marriage, it belongs to Sister Chloe. She thought, why would he? He whispered, go ahead, just accept it for now. It was Chloe's turn. Why are you giving this to me? The Grand Duke smiled gently. You didn't understand anything before, but you've improved a lot now. Consider this compensation for damages. Chloe repeated in her head, surprised. Compensation for damages? What kind of loss would be worthy of such an expensive gift like this? The officiant stood before them, looked solemn, and said, well then, you too. Seal your vows with a kiss. Chloe froze, her eyes wide with surprise. She exclaimed, huh? The Duke looked down at Chloe, a calm smile on his face. You guessed it, didn't you? It's a wedding, after all. He gently supported the back of her neck and kissed her. Chloe stood on her toes, clenching her fists. The orange-haired friend asked, how is Duchess Linland? The purple-haired girl replied, her voice half teasing. You probably came here mesmerized by her beautiful face, too. What terrible timing. How was I supposed to know Grand Duke Bach already had a lover? The orange-haired girl smiled and explained, actually, there are rumors that this was a hasty marriage due to the king's intervention. But today we've seen it with our own eyes. He's the real deal. Their relationship must be wonderful. What if they leave right after the meal without even watching a movie? The orange-haired girl covered her mouth, excited. By now, those two are probably having a lot of fun, right? In contrast to that fantasy, the two were brushing their teeth furiously. The bride mumbled while brushing, that was so disrespectful. You didn't even warn me about the kiss. The groom next to her replied nonchalantly, who doesn't know there's a kiss at a wedding? Chloe's face flushed and she stuttered. No, they know. The Grand Duke had changed into a robe and was standing calmly. Chloe mumbled, you have obsessive-compulsive disorder. Look, you change your clothes in the blink of an eye. Chloe blushed, beads of sweat on her forehead, thinking, and that wasn't a normal kiss, what we just did. The Grand Duke stood beside her, calmly explaining. It was obvious what people would say if I didn't do it, so I did. Wash it off properly, it's smudging. She said, since it's come to this, I'll sell the compensation items and make a profit. He continued, after the divorce, you can do whatever you want. Before that, let's finish the remaining tasks. She was surprised. We just finished the wedding ceremony. There's still more to do? The Grand Duke reminded her, today is your first day as a duchess. Are there any servants in the mansion? Chloe answered quietly, I hope not. The Grand Duke smirked. I guess my servants will also get to experience many new things. By the window, he extended a hand and introduced with a polite smile, welcome, Duchess. These are the people who will become your hands and feet. Chloe approached the glass window, her hand touching the frame. She thought, there are so many people, it's almost overwhelming. So I have to manage these people, right? He smiled calmly. By the way, about 80% of them are spies. For the Emperor. Chloe froze, a forced smile on her face, falling into a state of shock. She thought, well, I'm screwed. A middle-aged man in a tailcoat adjusted his bow tie, smiling confidently as he introduced himself. I am Philip Dentang, a very prestigious butler. The servants hired by the Bachs. I manage all the servants of the Bach family. I was originally going to be the chief administrator in the palace, but the scene changes to outside the castle on a moonlit night. A startled cry rang out. What? What do you mean? You want me to be the butler for the Bach family? In the great hall, the king sat on the throne, the man kneeling below. The king calmly ordered. Yes, from there, report all of Curtis's movements to me, if possible. It would be good if you could find his weakness, and that is why I am here. Of course, so far, the Duke has shown himself to be a workaholic. The butler stood looking at Curtis's work papers and reports, frowning and lamenting in handwriting. Why is he so diligent? As a Duke, doesn't he know how to enjoy life a little? Life? But now it's different. The troublesome future Duchess has appeared, the daughter of a fallen, poor military family. She is certainly a woman who yearns for a marriage of advancement. In the hall, Butler Philip asked Noel, Lieutenant Memphis, when will the couple arrive? I must go out to greet them, madam. Memphis replied, they said they are tired right now. Philip frowned, but even so, tell them we will wait here until they arrive. Memphis looked over, sweating, and remained awkwardly silent. All right, I will pass on the message. The Duchess has suddenly been elevated in status. She must be very arrogant now. The woman who always yearned to marry up has finally achieved her goal. When the tension subsides, the probability of making a mistake will be very high. Come now, Duchess, I will be a thorn in your side, in front of all these servants. Make a fool of yourself and make a mistake. The butler bowed very politely to the new couple. He said, Welcome, Duchess. It is an honor to welcome someone as beautiful as you here. This mansion will surely be full of life. In his head, he thought sarcastically, Grand Duke, your taste is lower than I thought, isn't it? Chloe extended her hand as if for a handshake, her expression frank. It's a pleasure to meet you. I hope to receive your help, as there is still much I don't know. He was surprised internally. Huh, handshake? The butler smiled and extended his hand in return. In his head, he sneered. What is this? This woman doesn't even know how to treat servants? His mouth still spoke flowery words. I am also very honored to serve a kind lady like you. Chloe suddenly changed the subject, asking directly, Butler, you used to serve the king before, right? He was momentarily stunned. It was so sudden. Then he answered, That's right. Ah, Philip Dentang, of the 5th generation of the Dentang family. Chloe continued, her voice calm. So you hold both the position of royal chamberlain and butler here. The butler replied, No, His Majesty has assigned me the duty of serving Duke Bach. Chloe concluded, So now you only work as a butler here, right? He replied, Fortunately, that is correct. In his petty thoughts, she really doesn't understand anything. You can't have two bodies to be both a royal chamberlain and a butler. Chloe crossed her arms. Why are you acting as if you're so high and mighty? The butler exclaimed in alarm. What? Chloe's face soured slightly as she questioned the butler. Even though the Duke and I said we were tired, you insisted on coming out to greet us, didn't you? The butler hurriedly bowed low, sweating. A thought flashed through his mind. Her attitude changed in an instant. Time to start the act. He said, I apologize. I was inconsiderate. I apologize for not considering your fatigue, but I couldn't even take proper care of you while you were already in the mansion before the wedding. She tilted her head mockingly. Oh, you were so eager to see my face even before I was married? What were you planning to do? The butler exclaimed in alarm. What are you saying? It's not like that, Chloe said coldly. Then what is it? Is it your hobby to show off your incompetence when you can't even grasp the condition of your two masters? The butler defended himself. That's not it. It's just that I was too busy with the wedding preparations. He cursed internally. A low class wench dares to call me incompetent. The butler's face was bewildered when he heard her say, Oh, so it's my fault again? She said, You scrutinized me, your superior, and then praised me for being beautiful and so on. I thought you serve His Majesty the King, but it turns out that's not right, is it? On top of that, your words are full of sarcasm. With such a rude butler, how am I supposed to perceive this? He thought to himself, from the very beginning, when she extended her hand to shake, you were planning to cause trouble, weren't you? The butler broke out in a sweat, hurriedly explaining, No, it's a misunderstanding. I just said you were beautiful. There was no sarcasm. I've been a butler for a long time. I always meet many beautiful people here, and the girl crossed her arms and smiled dangerously, her eyes half closed. Oh, so you mean you doubted my beauty and wanted to verify it for yourself? The butler turned pale and was speechless. He then became flustered. No, that's not what I meant. I sincerely think you are very beautiful, Your Highness. Chloe replied softly, Oh dear, my dear. Curtis stood close by and smiled lightly. Chloe flinched slightly. Chloe commented, "You're quite soft in the mansion, aren't you? Even though you normally don't have to repeat orders to your subordinates." Curtis replied, "The mansion is not the army." Chloe frowned wearily. "Even so, to be scolded for judging others and then immediately repeat it? Then you're a complete fool." The butler raised his hands, sweating profusely. "I swear I was not judging you. Your Highness, I intended to praise you." Chloe said bluntly, "If you call that a compliment, you're quite good at backhanded compliments." The butler was confused. "I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean. A moment ago, when I extended my hand to shake, you even said it deliberately. It is an honor to serve a lady whose hand I can kiss, you remember?" The butler stammered an explanation. "That's just a social pleasantry when greeting a lady." Chloe stood opposite him, her tone like, "Oh, I see, oh, so that's how it is. So that means I don't even meet the standard of a lady according to etiquette. So you couldn't kiss my hand, is that it?" The butler hurriedly clarified, "That's not what I meant. Butler, I don't mind being reminded when I lack etiquette, but I'm not so foolish as to let you look down on me. The way you mock, criticize other people's choices. Honestly, it sounds like I'm reading a handbook on aristocratic backhanded compliments. So let's try translating what you've said to me so far. Shall we? A beautiful lady has arrived. The mansion will surely be more radiant." Chloe's interpretation is, "I don't care if you're beautiful or not. Even a servant like me feels qualified enough to judge you." One combo. "It is an honor to serve a lady whose hand I can kiss." Chloe's interpretation is, "You don't know the basic etiquette of the aristocracy. You fool." Two combos. "I apologize for not noticing that you two were tired, but since you were already at the mansion before the wedding, I felt it was necessary to come and greet you." Chloe's interpretation is, "You're the type of loose woman who is already hanging around a man's house before getting married." Three combos. Chloe asked, "Isn't that what you meant?" The butler was horrified. "No, not at all. I, Philip Dentan, will serve Her Highness the Duchess with the utmost sincerity. I swear." Philip gradually froze. The servants gathered, many covering their mouths in shock. The butler realized I had set up a perfect plan to intimidate the new Grand Duchess, but in the end, I was the one cornered. Could it be that this woman is much better than me? If so, now is the time to bow my head. He cried out, "I sincerely apologize, Your Highness the Grand Duchess. In my eagerness to serve my new master, I made a mistake." Chloe replied coldly, "Unfortunately, it seems you will have to go serve a new master again." The butler flinched and looked up slightly. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Then he wondered to himself, "Sir, a new master again? Is she going to fire me? I was sent by His Majesty. There's no way they can fire me. Or is it still possible? If she's the type to act outside of common sense, could that really happen?" The Duke said, "Let's end this here. After all, you were sent directly by His Majesty." The butler was overjoyed internally. "Yes, please think logically, Your Grace," he said, but Chloe is also upset. Chloe confirmed, "That's right." He was thrown into confusion again. "What is happening?" The Duke smiled gently. "Butler, I don't want to fire you. Doing so would be an insult to my brother." The butler bowed his head, stammering, "Thank you, Your Grace." The Duke continued, his voice still calm, "But it is also true that you ruined the Duchess's wedding night. You must offer a sincere apology, for example. Perhaps a service conduct inspection." The butler's eyes widened in shock. A service inspection? Just like how soldiers are disciplined. The Duke put his arm around Chloe's shoulder, smiled, and asked, "How about it? Is that punishment acceptable?" Chloe raised an eyebrow, sighed softly, too light. The Duke continued, "Then what kind of punishment do you want? But don't fire him." To soothe the feeling of having a good day ruined. I think. Chloe smiled chillingly, raising one finger. "How about a shot straight to the head?" The butler clutched his head and screamed in terror. She continued, "I was a naval officer after all. We could say it was an accident, a misfire, all right? Ha ha ha. The Grand Duchess is so mischievous. Just bear with it for a bit. You don't want to miss the chance to meet the king, do you?" "Dentan, why are you still standing there dazed?" The male lead smiled coldly, the threat echoing in his voice. "Get on your knees before my Duchess shoots you." "You know." The butler's head hit the floor with great force. "Your Highness the Duchess, please forgive me." The butler prostrated himself on the ground. Crying for mercy, he screamed internally, I, Philip Dentan, have to endure this humiliation." The male lead leaned over and asked Chloe, "What do you want to do now?" "We can't punish the same offense twice," Chloe replied, her voice light but firm. "What a pity. I guess I'll have to let it go this time. But if you repeat this behavior, before you can even bow your head, The bullet might get there first, remember that. The butler pressed his head to the floor, trembling as he cried out, "Yes, I understand. I sincerely apologize, Your Highness the Grand Duchess." Chloe said calmly, "All right, then consider it self-reflection, just a light punishment." She smiled and held up 3 fingers. "Hold this position for 3 hours." The butler thought to himself, 3 hours? I have to stay like this for 3 whole hours? Let's go. I'm hungry. Everyone is dismissed. Please prepare dinner. The butler was still prostrated, sweating profusely, thinking, are they really leaving me like this? 3 hours alone? Right here, kneeling like this? The mansion at night, the female lead exclaimed. So refreshing. The food is delicious. The wine is wonderful. Chloe leaned back and sipped her wine, her eyes blissfully narrowed. Outside the window in the distance, she could see the butler kneeling with his head on the ground. These salty appetizers are delicious. Indeed. Are you satisfied? Chloe replied, yes. The stress from work has completely vanished. Curtis continued, when you meet His Majesty's minions, feel free to enjoy yourself to the fullest. That's the right way to relieve stress, but it's going to get much worse from now on. Chloe gave a forced laugh, holding her wine glass. How much more stress are you planning to put me through? Here, Curtis said nonchalantly, well, there's probably something more stressful than me. From today, you will use the main building. Your room is right below mine. It will be cramped, very cramped. If you want more space, you can use the 3rd floor of the West Wing, where my mother used to stay, but I don't recommend it. Chloe asked why. Curtis looked to the side, his voice even. This mansion has no secret passages. It's not suitable for royalty. The king deliberately placed me in a place like this. So if that's the case, suppose a mysterious fire breaks out in my room. Isn't it easier to jump from the 2nd floor than the 3rd floor? Have you finished eating? Chloe frowned. Yes, because I just heard some very hard to swallow sounds. Curtis reassured her, you'll get used to it eventually. The golden bell was rung. Now let's end the meal here. The maid entered and asked, have you finished your meal? Chloe answered briefly, yes. Then I will lead Madam to the bathroom. Since this is Madam's first wedding night, I have prepared everything for you to rest well. It's so empty, weapons always within reach, the ceiling designed to spot an intruder with a single glance. So for now on, I have to live in a place like this. One hand raised a cup to her eye, as if inspecting it. Words reached her. Are you standing there praying or something? She called, sir. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. He said, this is the first time. She asked again, the first time for what? The man raised one finger, a smile on his face. The reply, the first time a woman has entered my bedroom. Chloe, wearing a nightgown, had a deadpan expression. In her mind, a siren was flashing, a warning. Nonsense detected. Chloe lowered her face, preparing to draw a gun, as if ready to deal with the nonsense spooter with a bastard and the bastard with a firing squad. She was startled, turning to fumble at her side. I don't have a gun. Curtis stood in front, laughing loudly. Ha ha ha. Then teased, were you really looking for a gun just now? Teasing you is fun. Choosing the Grand Duchess was the right choice. Then he thought to himself, yes, this is the reaction I wanted. It has to be like this otherwise. That distance from before. The inexplicable frustration at the banquet. The impulsive gift. Even the kiss. If not, it means I'm the only one bothered by this.